All right. Welcome back to Sweet Science Boxing Gym in Hawthorne, California. We're here for another episode of Just Boxing Live. I am your host, Sean Fitzgerald. Mikey Garcia passed his welterweight exam, but it wasn't without challenge as his opponent, Jessie Vargas, won at least half the rounds, according to one judge, and according to my co-host, as always, Anthony Stacks Saldana. What's up, Stacks?
What's going on, man? Big night of boxing last night.
Big night of boxing. Your homeboy, Jessie Vargas, against Mikey Garcia on DAZN.
Yeah, it came up a little short, man, but, it is what it is. We'll get into that. We'll talk a little Mikey, Jessie here in a few. He took an L, but he fought tough. He hung in there,
Fought tough and hung in there. You want to start with the other fights first, or you want to start straight away with...
Man, let's jump right into it, man. So we had Mikey Garcia taking on Jessie Vargas. Jessie Vargas, a big welterweight. He was supposed to be moving up to 154. Cut weight well. I was up in Vegas with him last week for a while. Watched him get ready for the fight. He looked like he was in shape. He had a game plan. And the first few rounds, it looked like he was sticking to the game plan. You have Mikey Garcia, who is the naturally smaller fighter. He was having a little trouble with Jessie's jab the first few rounds. I actually gave the first 4 rounds to Jessie, and then Jessie got caught.
But, of course, as the great Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until
they get hit.
They get punched in the face, and that's exactly what happened as Mikey Garcia closed the distance, was able to land that right hand in the 5th round, and the dynamic of the fight was never quite the same afterwards.
It wasn't, man. He was hurt. I thought actually he was going to get stopped there in the 5th round. He hung on. He made it through the round. 6th round, he was taking more of a beating, and finally got his feet back under him. In my opinion, won a couple of rounds of the later rounds.
Even in the second half of the fight.
Even in the second half of the fight. Okay. I actually had Jessie winning the fight 114-113. 7 rounds to 5. I give him the first 4, the 9th, the 11th, and the 12th. But, again, I was trying to be as unbiased as I possibly could.
But Jessie is your homie, to be fair.
He is. He really is. He's
and he was wearing those Cali custom kicks,
Yeah. And it was tough. It was a tough fight to watch. Seeing Jessie get hurt like that, it just it sucks, man. It really does. When you become friends with some of these fighters, and it's tough to see him in the ring, and it's tough to see him to get hit the way he did last night. It was a tough fight. I think there's still big fights. I mean, it's not like he really went in there and just got totally dominated by Mikey. It was still a close fight. He still put up a tough fight. He went all 12 rounds. But Mikey's Mikey, man. His only losses to Earl Spence. So when you're Jessie Vargas and your only 3 losses are to Manny Pacquiao, Mikey Garcia, and Timothy Bradley, says a lot about you, man. I mean, those are some pretty big names there.
Shout out real quick to Alberto Mian, who jumped on. What's up, Alberto? We're just talking about Jessie Vargas and Mikey Garcia. Of course, Mikey Garcia coming away with the win last night by unanimous decision on DAZN. Stacks on TV. He had it 7 rounds to 5 in favor of Jessie Vargas. There was at least one judge who had it really close, who had it 6 rounds to 6, which is, I'm inclined to say that I can find easily 6 rounds for Jessie. I don't know about easily. I can find 6 rounds in there to give Jessie Vargas. I'm in agreement that he won the first 4 rounds, although I will say that I think that the distance with which he won each round got less and less each time. So it was very clear that he won the first round.
Yeah.
The second round, very clear. A little bit closer in the third, and even closer still in the fourth. To the point where I had made the comment that I can see how very quickly we're going to see an adjustment for Mikey Garcia approaching the 5th or 6th round, because he seemed to be getting a little bit more into it or finding that rhythm the more rounds went on.
Exactly. And, even if they would have had the fight 10 rounds to 2 for Mikey, right, I wouldn't argue that, because of the fact that, like you said, there were some very close rounds. I know they used a graph during the fight where you would highlight certain rounds that could go either way, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say from the 9th through the 12th, it could have gone either way, right? And 2 of those first 4 rounds could have gone either way, right? So if you look at it that way and you look at a judge's perspective, because I know there was people saying, hey, 116, 111 was a really big spread there for Mikey. It was, but it wasn't, depending on what you're looking for in the fight. As far as, me having Jessie winning, it's like okay, can I give Jessie that round? Towards the end,
Looking for rounds to give him.
Looking for
perhaps.
rounds to give him.
Yeah.
Like, is it close? Okay, I'm gonna give it to Jessie, right? So that's not necessarily that he won that round, but I gave the closer rounds to Jessie, where an official could have given the closer rounds to Mikey,
Yeah.
and there's still no argument. So even if it was a 10 rounds to 2, there's no argument there. The first 2 were clearly Jessie's rounds. The third and the fourth were a lot closer.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to see that no judge had given Jessie Vargas all 4 of the first 4 rounds.
Yeah.
I personally thought he won the first 4 rounds. Looking at
did
the
I.
Facebook comments, I see plenty of people who thought he won the first 4 rounds. I think the announcers, yourself, but not one judge gave him all 4. There was a judge, obviously, who gave him 3 of the first 4. He'd given round 3 to Mikey Garcia.
Correct.
But one of the things I observed in this fight that was also a problem with Mikey Garcia in his debut at welterweight against Errol Spence is a lot of the rounds are tough simply because of inactivity.
Yes.
So meaning they're difficult to score because even though Jessie Vargas is hurt, he's putting in work at times where Mikey Garcia simply is not or appears to be taking rounds off. Do you think that level of activity is going to be a problem for Mikey Garcia as he continues to pursue big fights at welterweight, for instance, a fight with Manny Pacquiao?
Manny Pacquiao's activity level, I mean, as we all know, it's so great where Mikey's going to have to really pick up some speed, and he's really going to have to let go of some of those punches if he wants to hang in there with somebody like Manny Pacquiao or even somebody like Sean Porter. I could see him maybe even fighting Danny Garcia next. I know that fight was, they were trying to make that fight come to fruition. It never really did. As we know, Danny Garcia ended up fighting Ivan Redkach. But I don't. Can I see him winning a title at 47? Yes, but man, it's going to be tough against somebody like Manny Pacquiao, So,
well, on the plus side, one thing that we know is, as you said, Jessie Vargas has been in with a lot of marquee welterweights. He fought Timothy Bradley. He fought, obviously, Manny Pacquiao. He's never been hurt in that way. We've seen him drop several times on DAZN, but I would say that he was actually hurt several times throughout that fight. So Mikey's power is apparently on point for the welterweight division. Is that enough, you think? Or what do you think of Mikey's power and how it was displayed last night against Jessie Vargas?
Wade does have that power, right? Jessie is a bigger welterweight, but Jessie's been dropped in the past. Jessie was dropped against Manny. Jessie was dropped against Dolorme, right?
Yeah.
So,
but he was really very hurt last night.
Yeah, he was hurt. And one name I think that we're leaving out of the welterweight division that we didn't mention is Terrence Crawford, right? So those are your 3 champs. You got Terrence, you got Manny, and you got Errol Spence. I believe all give Mikey big problems at 47. I'm not saying that Mikey can't beat Manny, but as far as Terrence goes and as far as a rematch with Errol, I just don't see Mikey being quite at that level yet at 47. He is an elite boxer. Take nothing away from Mikey Garcia, but to be at that top level at welterweight right now, I don't see it.
The 2 biggest problems I see, where if I were looking at it, I would say I'm not sure how these things would play out in fights with other top welterweights. One, I mentioned already, it's the level of inactivity sometimes from Mikey, which is to say sometimes he's just not doing enough to win rounds. Even in rounds where Jessie Vargas is hurt and is putting in work, it's hard to measure Mikey's 2 shots, 3 shots that round, that looked like they were significant compared to all of the activity from his opponent. So one is the level of activity. I think the other is the fact that when you look at it, you can also say that, yes, it was a successful outing at welterweight, but it was against Jessie Vargas, and I think you found a significant number of rounds to give to Jessie Vargas. At least one judge found half the rounds to give to Jessie Vargas. I could easily say there were 6 rounds that I could give to Jessie Vargas. So I agree that the fight, when you look at it in a totality, Mikey Garcia was the right winner. He was the guy who should have won in that fight. But I do think that, a 114, 113 with the knockdown is completely a sufficient score. That's not a bad score.
No.
And so I look at it and I say, well, he did win, but he only picked up half the rounds in that fight. So when we're talking about competition, the level of a Terrence Crawford or a Manny Pacquiao, and that's not to a knock on Jessie Vargas. Jessie has competed at the highest level, but it's fallen a little bit short in some of those fights and some of those contests.
Correct.
And I think he's also at a point where he was ready to campaign at a heavier weight, had even stated that he felt comfortable at that weight. And so you look at some of these guys who are peaking now at 147, and you think, wow, Jessie was able to take half those rounds away. You know, what do we think Manny can do in this instance,
so if
as an example?
Yeah, exactly. So if you take Manny Pacquiao and you put him into that same equation, can he win one more round than Jessie did?
Yeah, of course. Not only that, I think
then he beats Mikey.
It's there's also a little bit of a power discrepancy probably between what Manny Pacquiao is bringing and what Jessie's bringing. Jessie is a big guy. Manny Pacquiao, obviously not a big guy. He has to consume something like 30,000 calories to even be a welterweight. But what we're talking about here is punching power. And they mentioned it last night. Jessie's the bigger fighter. Mikey appears to have greater punching power. Manny has got some pop in those shots. Every fighter he's faced, whether it was Floyd Mayweather or anyone else, he hurts at some point.
It's the
Everybody.
It's the accumulation of punches. I mean, look at what he did to Miguel Cotto. You know, it's not necessarily the one punch power shot, but it's just the accumulation of so many punches that Manny's throwing throughout those fights. It's a dangerous fight for Mikey. Is it a fight that I'd like to see? Of course. Is it a fight that I thought was going to happen instead of the Jessie Vargas? I did. I honestly believed that this first fight in 2020 for Mikey Garcia was going to be against Manny Pacquiao. I can see him running it in like June or July and them going into Texas and fighting.
Shout out to Aaron, Standing 8 Podcast. He says, no discredit to Mikey's win, but I felt Vargas made some costly miscalculations towards the middle of the fight. He started off great in the opening rounds. I don't disagree with that, and I also feel as though you could find another 1 or 2 rounds to give him towards the end of that fight, which makes it very interesting. Obviously, at least one judge thought so as well. So at the end of the day, of course, I agree. I would like to see him fight Manny Pacquiao as well. I don't know if I would like to see it as Manny Pacquiao fighting some of the other marquee welterweights.
No, exactly.
I would probably like to see more a Sean Porter and a Manny Pacquiao, or a Danny Garcia and a Manny Pacquiao, even a Bud Crawford and a Manny Pacquiao. But he did put his hat in the ring with that performance. He did show that the power carries, although I do think that the level of activity in particular will be a problem with Manny.
Yeah, exactly. I think, though, the person that won the show last night was in the co-main event, Mr. Roman Gonzalez.
Don't disagree. Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez.
Yes, Chocolatito looked like vintage Chocolatito last night. He went in there against a clearly bigger super flyweight and Call Yafai, and absolutely dominated that fight. He made Call fight his fight. Yafai never used his size to box Chocolatito. He went in there, and I think he thought that he could just overpower Chocolatito. And those short, quick hands, he completely dominated that fight from the opening bell. He absolutely had that fight his way. He made Yafai fight his type of fight and looked spectacular doing it.
You know, I think it's interesting that you say that, because I agree. Looking from the opening bell, I felt as though he was in control of that fight. And I think it took the announcers like 3 or 4 rounds to come around to the fact that Yafai wasn't, that this wasn't the right game plan in order to see. But I was looking at it thinking from the beginning, he's stacking up these rounds. And over a period of time, you could see that Yafai was just getting worn out. It seemed to be at a certain point a matter of time before that finish came.
Yeah.
And I think it was a spectacular finish. So let me ask you this. Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez now holds a world title belt again in a division with many fighters who he's competed with in the past. Gallo Estrada with Sorang Visay. What do you suggest as next steps for Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez?
I would love to see him go up against Jerwin Ancajas. I think Ancajas is the weakest link at the super flyweight amongst the champions. It would be a unification bout. So I could see Chocolatito beating Ancajas kind of the way he beat Yafai last night, and taking that title away from Jerwin and becoming a unified world champion there at Superfly. I'd like to actually see the trilogy between Gallo Estrada and Sorang Visay. But as far as Chocolatito, I think he should stay away from those two guys for a minute, and maybe, like I said, unify that title with Jerwin Ancajas.
Aaron chimed in again. He said, Yafai chanced it going toe-to-toe with Chocolatito. Chocolatito capitalized.
Exactly. I think he honestly thought that he was the bigger, younger, stronger fighter, and that his power would just would reign over Chocolatito. And Chocolatito's been in those types of fights. That's his style of fighting. He gets in there and he bangs. He uses those short hooks. He puts together combinations like probably no other fighter besides Manny Pacquiao. I mean, I don't see any other fighters putting together big combinations the way Chocolatito does right now. As far if you look from the heavyweight division all the way down to, you know, the minimum weight division, and you look at these fighters in between, you could say, in a way, maybe, but he's got a lot of one-punch pop, right? Neri at super bantamweight has a lot of one-punch pop, but as far as putting together just great combinations, you know, I think of two fighters. I think of Manny Pacquiao, and I think of Chocolatito Gonzalez.
Yafai, the thing that's interesting, I think that his mindset and some of what he spoke, according to the announcers in the pre-fight meetings, was making a statement performance, right? He wanted to come in and I think knock out Chocolatito or do something beyond just outbox him over the course of 12 rounds. And I think in searching for that defining moment, you know, we ended up getting a more toe-to-toe type of fight than perhaps we would have expected. And I was pleasantly surprised. You know, obviously, Chocolatito he's looked at as past his prime coming into that fight. He was an underdog. I think he was like a minus 150, minus 140, something like that going into that fight. But it was, as you said, vintage Chocolatito, and I hope to see more of that.
You know, Chocolatito's 32 years old, right? So he's not necessarily real old, but the thing for boxing and for everything he's been through,
he's
for
been
the
through a lot
types
of
wars
tough
that
fights.
he's been through, to be a 4-division world champion, the only 4-division world champion to ever come out of Nicaragua. Not even the great, I was going to say, is it Arguello? Alexis Arguello. Alexis Arguello. He couldn't even accomplish that, you know? So, I mean, shout out to that whole camp out there in Coachella. You know, he's training out there with Marcos Caballero, who is the father of Randy Caballero. And, you know, it was tough. You know, there's a good a documentary that my boy Albert Baker did. Under the Hand Wraps. He did a short documentary on Chocolatito, and it just talks about everything that he went through, you know, growing up so poor, fighting in this poor country. You know, his first fight, he said he made maybe $50 American, you know, and to get to the top and then to lose his trainer and to have Arnulfo die, his trainer Arnulfo pass away right before the first Sorong Vasai fight was I think that was critical, you know, and now he's got a good camp behind him. I think he's focused. I'm not necessarily going to say that he's put that death behind him, because you never forget something like that. It's always going to be in the back of your mind, but I think he's gone ahead and progressed forward with his career, and he looked great last night.
The Sportsanista made an interesting comment that I agree with. He said, imagine if Chocolatito had his HBO gig just a few years earlier, he would have been special. He just didn't get the push when he was in his prime. And I do agree that by the time we were seeing Chocolatito in the mainstream, obviously he fought here several times, and so, you know, we have exposure to him in L.A. Yeah. But by the time you kind of see him hitting mainstream television, you know, it's almost towards the end of what we're considering his prime, to the point where even at 32 now, given the amount of fights he's had, given the amount of miles he has in those fights, we kind of look at it and we go, oh, he's old, right? He's old. And so we kind of really only got exposure to the tail end of that. But for someone who has accomplished what he's accomplished in the sport, being a future Hall of Famer for sure, 4-division world champion, right? Just won another belt, could possibly go on to unify and do even more in this space. Yeah. I think that I agree. It would have been great to get to watch that unfold kind of earlier throughout the process of his career. He has an amazing story, and I don't disagree. So be sure to check out that documentary from Albert Baker, Under the Hand Wraps.
And shout out to the Sportsanista. She is one of the top boxing journalists out of Las Vegas. So thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. You know, I didn't get a chance to talk to you at the Fury Wilder rematch. I did see your partner out there, so I talked to him and his twin brother. So shout out to you. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, and shout out to Lukey too.
Lukey
Kettle jumped
Jessie.
on, man.
Jesse's on as well. So Jessie, man, we talked about you a little bit at the beginning of the show. So keep your head up, man. There's a lot of opportunities out there. It was a good fight. You fought tough. You know, a lot of tough rounds in there. So, you know, we just got to move forward, Jess, man.
Yeah, and I think that we agree, for those of us who've been commenting here and discussing it, that it was actually a close fight.
Oh, it was. Like
it was
I
actually
said,
a close fight.
You know, when one of the judges has it 6-6.
Rightfully so.
Rightfully,
that's not. I think it's very possible to find 6 rounds to give Jessie in that fight, particularly because you and I, many people on Facebook, we agree. First 4 rounds, that's Jessie Vargas.
Easy.
That's Jessie Vargas. I was actually surprised that the judges gave away some of those split the
rounds.
first 4, or one judge went 3-1.
Yeah.
But
like I said,
first
with him winning the first 4, in my eyes, winning the first 4 and then picking up 3 at the end gives him the 114, 113 win, so. But like I said, those are. I'm not going to argue with the judges. A lot of those rounds were tough to score.
that's your homeboy right there, too. You got to admit
Sure
it.
Is.
There's some personal bias in there.
Yeah. No,
that's
but
okay.
No, all bias aside, though, and you know this. All bias aside, some of those latter rounds, the championship rounds, were tough to score.
I absolutely agree. Like I said, I don't think it's difficult at all to find 6 rounds to give Jessie Vargas in that fight. So I don't disagree with you at all.
That's right. He's still the pride of Las Vegas.
The pride of Las Vegas. You know what else I really appreciate about Jessie? And I made this comment shortly after he was on the program. I had said he's always on. Like, he's ready to give the promo. He's ready to cut it, man.
Yeah.
And that post-fight interview with Jessie Vargas, all class. Like, I feel like he still could have sat down and announced some fights and been entirely himself and give
right,
dude. He was ready to go. He took responsibility for it. He owned it. He said, "Hey, there were some things I could have done better. Some things I could have listened to more from my camp. I had a great camp. I thought the fight was close, and he was right. It was close.
And he didn't blame his suit of armor.
He could have sat down and called fights for Golden Boy right now.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He didn't blame the armor suit.
And he didn't blame, was it one of the Durrell brothers? Right? Said that he persuade the
suit of armor.
Persuade the towel to be thrown in because Durrell trains at
Yeah, I know.
at Crunk.
Yeah.
No excuses for Jessie, buddy.
No excuses for
No
Jessie.
excuses.
Class act.
That's right.
In defeat, of course. So shout out to Jessie Vargas.
All right, man. Also on that card, great fight to kick it off. Well, actually, no, it wasn't to kick it off. I think it was the second fight of the mainstream between Israel.
Yeah, I don't recall if it was the
Israel
second.
Madrimov.
Yeah, but that was on the other stream.
Was it on the other stream?
That was on the first stream.
Well, let's go to the Martinez.
Yeah, Julio Cesar Martinez was the first
Martinez
fight, I think, on
Harris.
the mainstream against Harris.
Jeez, man.
So let me ask
That
you something
fight.
about that. That fight, coming away from it, do you think that, given the way that Harris performed, which I think is kind of unanimously agreed for the boxing community was above expectations in terms of that being a really terrific fight, possibly a fight of the year type candidate. Do you look at that fight, and does it tell you more about Harris than it did about Julio Cesar Martinez?
It did, and as the announcers were talking, they said that he works at a warehouse distribution center, so this is the first real camp where he didn't have to work and trained. He changed his game plan. He boxed when he had to box. He got in there and he banged with Martinez when he needed to bang. I just think if he would have had a little bit more pop, the outcome would have been a little bit different. But he just wasn't strong enough to hurt Martinez. And I don't know if it was necessarily the power of Harris or the chin of Martinez. Because it was a great fight. He couldn't get to that level to actually hurt Martinez. Where Martinez's shots were the stronger shots. He was a little bit more effective with the power in his shots, than Harris was. Harris, he performed beautifully, but he just could never really hurt him. It kind of seemed like Martinez would walk through some of those punches. Yeah, there was a few that you could tell rung Martinez's bell, but never to the point where he was actually hurt.
Yeah.
Where it almost seems like during that fight, it was just going to be a matter of time before Harris was broke down and Martinez was going to knock him out, but it never happened, so tough kid, tough as nails. I think last night he showed that he had maybe too much heart. I don't know. I think it was a good fight, and it's like I was torn. Like, do you stop the fight? Do you not stop the fight? Yeah, he was in it, but it just seemed like some of those shots from Martinez were really, really hurting Harris.
Yeah, I think that looking at that fight, one of the things you had commented on Facebook about 6 rounds in, hey, this is shaping up to be a fight of the year type candidate. And one of the comments I made I want to elaborate on a little bit, which was that it depends because fights like that can sometimes get redundant if they're too one-sided. So if you see people who are exchanging but neither person is in imminent danger, and you can kind of see their competitive rounds, but one person is continuing to win over and over. Throughout the course of a 12-round fight, that can get boring because what you expect each round to look like the one before it. You've seen it for 6 rounds. You expect round 7 to look like 6 and so forth and so on. But I would say that wasn't the case with that fight because there were points in time where, of course, he went on and was able to drop Harris. And there were points in time where Harris had tremendous success in that fight, landing combinations and boxing well on the outside. There were even times where they were telling him, don't stand in there and trade punches, but he was getting the better of some of those exchanges.
Yeah.
And you look at it, and it's one of those fights, the types of fights we discuss, which are sometimes I don't envy the judge's decision in here because what you're gauging is, the effectiveness of someone's punches versus, the volume and combinations and some of that. It's not as if those shots look like they didn't hurt. They just didn't hurt as much.
Right. So what I'm seeing, right, is when he's outside and he's using his length, he's boxing beautifully. He's beating Martinez, right? And then he engages, right? And you're thinking to yourself, he can't engage with Martinez. He's going to get hurt. But like you said, inside he's winning some of these.
He's winning some of these
exchanges, right? And then, bam, Martinez catches him with a good counter, a good 1-punch or 2-punch counter that slows him down. It kind of slows down that momentum, and it's like, damn, right? Like you were doing it, and then you got hit. Like, so it's tough because I can go in there as Harris, and I can win in the inside, but am I going to get caught? And that's the thing. He was getting caught with the effective heaviness of Martinez's punches, I think, a little bit too much, and it's great fight, though. I mean, I think if he can adjust his game plan, Harris is the type of fighter that, okay, I'm going to learn from this, and I can change my game plan. If I need to box, I can box. If I need to get in there and bang, I can adjust to make the rematch better. Where Martinez, it just seems like he's stuck with that one type of style. Come forward, let's bang it out. May the best man win. Rock'em sock'em robots, let's go. But Harris, he seems like he's more technically sound, a better boxer. Now I know that Martinez is with Reynoso now. I've seen Ryan's dad back there with him as well, Henry Garcia. So
not his head trainer,
no,
but yeah.
Yeah, so he's there in camp with Canelo, with Oscar Valdez, with Ryan Garcia. So we'll see if he makes adjustments. He is still very young. I think he's only like 22 or 23 years old.
What do you think of Brian Kenny's comments that he could put right now Julio Cesar Martinez just behind the likes of Lomachenko and Canelo on the pound-for-pound list?
No way. No way, man. I don't know what Brian Kenny was smoking last night. He's not – no.
Just a straight no.
No. He's not a pound-for-pound world champion. Okay. Now, I'm not going to say Harris is basic, right? I won't say that, but you know what? Look at the competition he's really fought. I mean, I think his toughest fight was Patty Burns, on the other side of the pond. So, at 112, it's kind of tough. But at 115, you put him in there with Sorong Vasai, or you put him in there with Chocolatito, or you put him in there with Gallo Estrada. No, he's not at that pound-for-pound level yet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that was interesting is they kind of just leapfrog people like Gallo Estrada, who has been kind of towards the bottom of that pound-for-pound ranking list when you look at a number of people like ESPN and things like that. I thought it was interesting to have him kind of jump straight into that,
where you
that top 3 position.
Where you going to put him at? You got Loma. You got Canelo,
He said behind Loma and Canelo.
Right.
He was inserting him behind Loma and Canelo.
You're going to put him in there in front of Crawford, in front of Earl Spence, in front of somebody like Tyson Fury, in front of somebody like Inoue.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a number of fighters that are in that top 5 pound for pound that easily surpass Martinez. Martinez is, don't get me wrong, he's a tough, exciting fighter to watch, but I mean, to automatically throw him in the top pound for pound list.
You know what I think is interesting about that is, what is the number one reason that you hear to dispute Lomachenko's place on the pound for pound list or as an all-time great? What's the number one thing you hear?
Orlando Salido,
right? Orlando Salido. Every person who wants to debate whether or not Lomachenko is greater than or less than anyone else, they're automatically going to say, well, he lost to Salido, right? That's what they're going to tell you.
Yeah.
Julio Cesar Martinez, interestingly enough, lost his pro debut.
Yeah.
He lost his pro debut by, I think, a split decision. He went on to avenge that later and winning only a majority decision in that. But I think it's interesting that, that's, I think, the number one thing that people point to for Lomachenko you're going to experience some of that for sure with Julio Cesar Martinez.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, he lost his first fight.
Happens,
It
man.
was only Lomachenko's second fight.
Right.
For a world title, nonetheless.
Exactly. Then to kick things off, or then also on the card, I shouldn't say to kick things off, I keep saying that, but to also on the card, you had the kid from Uzbekistan,
Yeah.
Israel Madrimov,
Yep.
who fights also out there out of Coachella, who trains with Joel Diaz. That kid is something special, man. The way he was dancing in that ring and going from orthodox to southpaw, in between punches, I've never seen anything like that. And to carry power in both hands, and to fight at both types of stances and just kind of bounce back and forth at 54, right? So you're looking at super welterweight, who he just glides in that ring. That was it's pretty good, man. I mean, I think he's the real deal at 54. I could easily see him, knocking out somebody like Rosario, So he's gonna be a force to be reckoned with.
That's your prospect to watch for now. Absolutely, I don't disagree with it.
Yeah, he's the real deal. He's legit. The other prospect, he'll be fighting pretty soon against Joe Joyce, and that's Daniel Dubois, the heavyweight.
Yeah, Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce. I was surprised that they made that fight.
Yeah, me
actually.
too, man. They're both good prospects, but
yeah,
I
thought that it's interesting. I like that they make it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to the fight, but I thought it was interesting that they take two people who are at that stage of their career
and put them together so soon.
Yeah, put them together so soon.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Dubois, and then now of course Israel Madrimov.
Yeah.
The dream. Woo.
The dream.
That guy is
all right. So the
legit.
winner of the other one, the winner
of the other one
of Joe Joyce.
And then
Daniel Dubois.
you had local boy Diego Pacheco. He looked good last night as well. He was on the card. And who
Absolutely.
else? This kid out of Las Vegas, another one of Robert Garcia's guys from Vegas. He looked pretty good too, man.
Shout out to Paco Perez who jumped on the chat.
And
Paco, thank you for your endless support.
Man,
love it, brother.
Paco, you back from Texas yet?
Yeah, I know. He should be flying back.
And if you
flying back today.
And if you are,
tell Paul Behnke I said happy birthday.
Happy
by the way.
birthday!
Happy
exactly,
birthday to
man.
world champion Paul Behnke.
Yeah.
The Sportsanista said he's a bigger version of Crawford. That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
No, he really is, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
from a switch stance perspective, power on both sides, a lot of the same qualities or attributes. It's funny because like a lot of the people who we're looking at now and we have admiration for in terms of boxing skills and pound for pound rankings, the people we're talking about today, like Bud Crawford, if you talk about Julio Cesar Martinez, that's one of the big selling points that people always point to, that he can switch stance, he can fight with both hands. We've got this young gentleman as well. It's interesting because I feel like when Floyd Mayweather was popular, gyms had to contest with the fact that everybody wanted to come in and do the shoulder roll, and to say, hey, don't do that. You have to. That's not how we're going to do this, right? Keep your hands up. We'll get there. I feel like this multi-handed change stepping, activity. We're going to see a lot more of that. The gym owners of the world, the trainers of the world, are going to have to deal with all these kids who want to come in and fight on both sides.
I seen a certain fighter one night, right? And I'm not going to name this fighter. They were fighting at the Belasco. I will tell you, it was a Golden Boy fighter, and they were jumping in between stances that way and got caught and got put on their ass, right?
Yeah.
And it was more of a off balance. I slipped, got caught in between jumping in between stances, than it was of them actually getting hurt. And then that corner wasn't very nice. And told this person stick to your flipping style, and.
It's funny. I've experienced many trainers who kind of train orthodox, and then for southpaw, the advice is because you're training. A lot of times, if you're in a gym like this, you may be training a large class, right? So the advice is, hey, I'm going to show this orthodox. You guys just do it the opposite, right? But nobody really focuses on saying like, hey, let's take someone who is right-handed and make them left-handed. Let's take someone who's left-handed, make them right-handed, so forth and so on.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to see as more of these people arise. I've had a number of young cats on this show come on and say, hey, I'm a switch hitter. I like to fight both sides, right? Like you hear that all the time. I can fight left-handed. I can fight right-handed. That's going to be the new shoulder roll, man. People are going to be like, hey, stop that. Stop switching feet.
Switching feet, right? Yeah. Okay.